Tables are quite common in HTML, and you're going to eventually have to use them. Over the last decade or so, tables have been phased out in favor of elements that load faster, such as the div element. However, there are some cases where a table is just the right solution for you, and it's important to understand all the different parts of a table. Now, a table is fairly complex, and it consists of many different parts. The first thing you need to know is that the table element is just called table. There's nothing fancy about that. And if you want to create your first row, because tables work on rows and cells, think of it like a spreadsheet, you're going to want to create a TR. That's a table row. You open and close it, just like you would with most HTML elements. But inside of this row, you also need a cell. Now this cell, you would think would be TC, table cell, but it's actually TD, table data. This will be the first cell, and let's create one more. And in parentheses, I'm going to write data so you know that a cell is actually a TD. Now, if we preview this, it doesn't really look like much. But if we add border to our table, just a 1 pixel border, now we can see that they're actual cells. The table also takes a width. We can say we want the width to be 100%. And now it's 100% of the screen, or its containing element going from left to right. And if we simply want to add another cell, we just add one more cell. And now we're going to have 3 columns. The table element also has cell spacing and cell padding, but we'll get to cell padding in just a moment. Cell spacing, if you take a look at this versus that, or if we make this drastically different, that is the spacing between each of the cells. And if I'm just going to put that back to normal. Here's what it looks like when I set it back to 5. There's another one called cell padding. And we want this one to be set at, let's see what 5 does. So that's the padding inside the cell. Not between the cells, but inside each cell. And if we make this much more drastic, you can see that it's the padding between the lettering that we see here and the first inside border. We can also change the border color by using the border color attribute and just the name of a color. We can say change this to red, and it is now red. And that border does not have to stay as 1. It can be drastically larger. So you see now that the border is all the way around the table. It's not the border for each cell. However, adding a border does add that 1 pixel border all the way around each cell. So now we have a row. I'm going to add notes here. This is a row. This one is table data. And if we wanted to create one more row, all I did was copy that over, refresh the page, we have another row. Now the next one we need to know are column spans and row spans. So let's say the first row has 4 cells, and the second row has 3 cells. It's not going to line up properly, and this is how Chrome tries to figure that out. There are 4 cells at the top, 3 cells at the bottom. But what if we want this bottom cell to span over 2 columns? Well, that's when we add this one here. So to make sure that you're working in the right place, if you're new with HTML, you can simply add a working here text, refresh your page, and it says working here. Great. So we know where we're working. We're going to select this element, and we're going to change the column span, or col span, to 2. That means it's going to take up 2 columns instead of 1. Refresh that, and now the cell takes up 2 columns instead of just the one it was supposed to. Now let's add a third row. This one's also going to have 3 cells. However, we want to merge this cell with this one. So let's go back to where we were, working here, Yep, we're in the right cell. And if we said row span is equal to 2, this takes up 2 rows now. Now, to make a little more sense of this, because this is getting a little bit difficult, we're going to label these row and a cell number. Now we can see if this is the row and this is the cell, we've got row 1, cell 1, row 1, cell 2, row 1, cell 3, and so on and so on. Here we have row 2, cell 1, and it takes up 2 rows. Remember, that's because we have the row span is set to 2. Whereas this one is row 2, cell 3, and row 2, cell 4. That's because we have column span set to 2. Now this works off the row that has the most amount of cells in it. So all of this works off the first row because the first row has 4 cells in it. Now we can also add header, body, and footers. So this one's quite easy. This is a t-head, t-body, which is where all your rows and data is going to go. And then t-foot. Now this is simply a way to manage our row information. So in our head, in our table head, we have our table row, and we need th, which is a table header. We'll call this column 1. Make this a little more compact. Column 2, 3, and 4. Now, if we go and take a look, we have column headers. Now the TH is different from the TD. The TH is the table head, is going to make your text bold automatically and center it. If we didn't want that, we just change that back to TD, and it's going to act as a normal header. And the only reason that we're calling this one a header is because we've put it in the t-head element. Now this is only if you're becoming more organized with your HTML. We can also take that exact thing and copy it into the t-foot, and what happens? The same thing. The only difference is that one is specifying that this whole row here is a header, and this whole row here is the table footer. So we're going to call this, change these so they make a little bit more sense. So you can think of this as a human body. You have the header, which is your head, your body, so your torso, your arms, your legs, and your footer, which is your feet. All are very vital to your body, all are very vital to a table. The next thing we want to learn here is how to change the width of a column. That takes the width attribute, put it on any single column, and let's change this width to 50%. Head 1, this whole column, is now 50% of the table, and the remaining 50% have to be split equally between these 3. Now we can also specify that we want the second column to have a width of 25%. And it takes effect for the entire column. The browser will automatically figure this out. And you can put this on anyone. Doesn't have to be in the head, doesn't have to be in the footer or body. It can be on any single cell. You notice that 50% width for row 1, column 1, row 1, column 1, affects the entire column, affects the entire table. Now, if you do not specify a width for any of your cells, your browser is going to automatically optimize for what it thinks is best. So right here, it looks like it's trying to optimize for 25% width on each column. However, if we add more text, it's now making more room and it's squishing the other ones together. This may not give you the desired effect that you want, and if that is the case, you're going to want to add that width to each cell. Now that is how you create a table in HTML. So your task for this video is quite a long task. First, create a table, then create 3 rows, then create 4 cells in each row, Go back to your table element, add a border to your table, change the border color of your table, make the width of your table 100%, so it takes up the entire width of your screen. On row 2, cell 3, I want you to use the colspan attribute to take up 2 columns. That means you're going to have to remove the 4th cell in row 2. Also in row 2, I want cell 1 to take up 2 rows. That means you have to remove the 1st cell in row 3 and use the row span attribute. Once you're done that, add a table head, table foot, and table body. Save all of your progress, open it up in your browser, and if your table looks similar to the table that you saw in this video, then you're finished.